Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
David Fradin joining us here, our Spice Catalyst and the man in charge, the man of the hour. And glad you're back and excited to talk to you more about what you do at Spice Catalyst and, of course, all the work on training and consulting that you and your company does, let alone you as an author, as an entrepreneur. There's many words to describe you, and we're excited that you're here helping so many with product marketing training. And I know we've gotten into a lot the past few weeks, and I'm excited to talk more today. So first, I'd like you to give everyone a little overview, and second, my condolences. We talked off air before, and I know there's a little bit of backup in the house, but you're safe, you're okay, right?
My background is in product management at Hewlett Packard and at Apple, and started a company called Spice Catalyst, which you can see on the screen along with my email address. And I've identified the 5 keys to success, which is mnemonic for the name Spice, SPICE. So in the second edition of this podcast, we're on the sixth one now.
Yeah.
We talked about strategy, product market strategy. And then the next edition, we talked about processes and repeatable processes. And then we talked about information and the following uh, podcasts. And now we're on to C, which is the most important one, and that is understanding what it is that your customer wants to do.
Interesting. Thank you. And by the way, I just want to point out if you are just on the podcast and you can't see our friend, let's just tell them how we can contact you. That email address is dave@spicecatalyst.com and also the website spicecatalyst.com. All right, let's get started for today. Bring it on.
Yeah, I should mention first that the next issue of this next week, we'll talk about the competencies or skill sets, of which I've identified 130 that a company or an organization or a service organization has to have in order to be successful. And failure in any one of these 5 areas has resulted in about 35% of all new products introduced each year
Wow.
failing in the marketplace, which represents a loss to the world of about $1 trillion. So these 5 keys are very important. The one we're going to talk about, and if people have any questions, to send me an email, and we'll answer those questions in one of the future podcasts. We've got 3 more to do after this one. So we have
Beautiful.
lots of time for these questions. So the thing I wanted to talk about today is understanding your customer. And the first thing to understand is what is it that your customer wants to do? Why do they want to do it? When do they want to do it? Where do they want to do it? How do they want to do it? What's standing in their way? How important is it for them to get that thing done? And most importantly, how satisfied are they with their current way of doing things? For example, the caveman or cave woman wanted to down what they were doing or seeing or draw something, and they used to do that on a cave wall. Well, if they wanted to show it to their cave mates in the next cave, it's kind of hard to move the cave wall over there. So they chipped the rocks off and they came up with slates. They carried that around and they thought that was pretty heavy. So eventually they invented paper. And for the writing utensil, at first they used charcoal, but they didn't like getting their hands dirty. So they wrapped it with wood and they called it a pencil. And then they noticed that the pencil wore down and they had to always constantly sharpen it or they would run out of a pencil. So they invented the fountain ink well and quill from a bird to write with. And they didn't like that because someone would always knock the fountain of ink over.
The ink over,
and
yeah.
mess up their cave. So they invented the ballpoint pen, and then people noticed that that was kind of slow. So they had typewriters, at first mechanical, then electric typewriters, and then word processing on dedicated computers,
Yeah.
and then word processing on our computer. And now all we need to do is dictate and have it transcribed poorly. So we spend the rest of our life editing the transcription. Point is that at each step of the way, it's doing the same thing, but some of the ways it was being done was unsatisfactory. And the things that people wanted to do was write things down and communicate it and send it to others. So that's the key thing to do is to understand what is it that your customer wants to do. The reason that's important is you can't ask a customer or prospective customer, what is it that they need or what is it that they want? And the reason being is if order for you to know that you need something or want something, first you have to identify the problem. And then second, you have to identify the solution. And most people struggle trying to identify the problem. That's why cavemen and cave drawings existed for so long. And then in order to figure out the solution, you have to engineer the solution. And very few people are capable of doing that kind of thing. So an example of that was Henry Ford, the inventor of the
Hmm.
low-cost automobile, went out into the streets of Dearborn and he asked people, Dearborn, Michigan, which is not far where I grew up in Detroit, and he asked people if they like to have a car. And they said, no, I don't want a car. I don't even know what a car is.
Uh-huh.
I want a faster horse. So if he just sat on the stoop of one of the many saloons in Dearborn, having a beer and watched people go by, he would have seen some of them were hitting their horse with a stick in order to get
Aw.
them to go faster.
Yeah, yeah.
And that could be part of the reason why they didn't call it a car or an automobile when it first came out. They called it a horseless carriage. And Steve Jobs pretty much says the same thing. You can't ask people what they want or what they need. So what you do is you go out and observe what it is that they want to do. Then you interview maybe 40 to 80 people or companies if your target is business to business. Then you survey about 800 to 1,200 people or prospective customers. And from that, you could project what the key selling points are going to be, the value proposition, leading into being able to do product positioning, things of which we talked about earlier in these podcasts. And that also gives you quantitative numbers you can use to forecast your return on investment based upon how much money you have to invest in building out that product or service. Now, the reason I say you need to understand what it is that you want, your customer wants to do, is that the notion of this came from outcome-based innovation. A series of books by, I think, a Harvard or MIT professor. And that was picked up on by a company in San Francisco called Synergy. And they put out a book called Jobs to Be Done. Well, I propose a job to be done is too big to really understand what kind of product you should build. So, for example, back in 2018, I was in Singapore giving a speech at a product management conference, and I had to go to Bangalore, India to teach a product management course for Cisco, who's one of my leading clients around the world. The outcome was to get from Singapore to Bangalore from one hotel to the other hotel. The job was to get from that hotel to the other hotel and maybe get to the airport and then and so forth. But the more granular thing is what did I need to do? I needed to figure out what mode of transportation I would take from the airport in Singapore, or excuse me, from the hotel in Singapore to the airport.
Got it.
Will I take a taxi? Would I take an Uber? Would I take the train? Would I take a bus? Would I see if there's a courtesy van? How much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take for me to get there? So those are all the things I needed to do, which is not explained in the job to be done. So the important thing is to get down to the granularity of each of those things in terms of understanding what it is that your customer wants to do. And as I mentioned, you first start with observing, like a
Mm-hmm.
social anthropologist. And if people observed what I went through when I got to the Singapore airport, which was I wanted to find the ticket counter, and my phone knew what airline I was flying on. And so I got came in, went up to the information desk. They pointed me at the ticket counter, went over to my airline's ticket counter and said, "Here's my ticket. I'm going to Bangalore." And they said, "Where's your ticket to leave India?" And I said, "Why do I need a ticket to leave India?" They said, "You can't go to India unless you prove you want to leave." And I'm saying to myself, I guess they already have 1.6 billion people. They guess they don't want me
Yeah.
to be around.
Didn't know that. Wow.
I said, "Well, I don't know when I'm leaving because I'm giving speeches at Siemens and at Bosch and at Samsung and others, and it's being set up by Manipal Pro University, of which I'm a professor of, on my behalf, and all of my speeches haven't been set yet, so I don't know when I'm leaving. But let me assure you, I'm not going to stay in India. I will leave India. They said, too bad you can't go to India unless you could prove you're going to leave India.
Oh,
So I said, how
wow.
do you do that? They said, you go get an airline ticket. They
You have
said,
to
well, you
buy.
go go over to Singapore Airlines, which is over there, and get one. So I go over there, stand in line for a while. And keep in mind, it's about 6 o'clock in the morning, and get up there. I'm sorry, we don't fly to Bangalore. Well, who does? And they said, well, you can go to a ticket agency in Terminal 1, and I'm in Terminal 2. And if
Oh,
anybody's been
gosh.
to Singapore Airport, it's huge. It'll
I've
take
been
probably
there.
2 miles, 2 minutes, 20 minutes just to walk there and 20 minutes back.
Oh, my
And I always had
goodness.
bad experience with with travel agents. So I said, okay, I'll go online and buy the ticket. So I was hungry, went up to the mezzanine at the airport, and checked into the restaurant, sat down, and tried to sign on to the internet via the Wi-Fi device in the airport. And
Ah,
when you do that, you get a screen that says, "Okay, we'll text you the access code." Well, I had bought an international SIM before I landed in Singapore, but it didn't work in Singapore.
oh, my
So,
goodness.
so I couldn't get the code to access the Wi-Fi to buy a ticket so I could go to India. That
All
was the
these
things
hurdles.
to do. And my phone knew all of this. My phone could have told me all of this in anticipation of what was going on. So that's why it's so important to observe what it is that your customer wants to do and figure that out.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. By the way, I just got to confirm you obviously went, you got out. How did you get the ticket? I'm just curious.
Well, after getting I remember, or I asked the waitress, how do I get the code to the Wi-Fi? She said, at the information counter. I said, the one at the other side of the terminal that I came in on? They said, yes. So I went downstairs, traipsed across the terminal, got my Wi-Fi number, came back, and while I'm eating breakfast, I decided I was tired of trying to look at things on the little tiny iPhone screen. So I took out my iPad, and it turned out the user interface for accessing Wi-Fi at that time was different on one iOS device than it was on the other. So I had to climb up the learning curve, finally got there, put in the code, and went to I don't know, like kayak, to find the cheapest ticket that happens to be leaving India. Bought the ticket, got the email with the ticket, finished breakfast, went downstairs, checked my bags, finally got through the gate, the security gate. I went in, and then I wanted to know where the business class lounge was, and nobody could tell me, and there was no signs there. And so I sat down and said, "Okay, I'll just wait here to board the plane." Happened to look up,
Wow.
and there was the business class lounge on the second level. And my phone knew where these places were. They could have told me. In fact, there's an
Hmm.
app now called Trip It and others that have come out that tell you, give you maps of the airports you have and so forth. So my original objective was to get to the business class lounge and have a free lunch, a free breakfast, which did not happen. But I finally got up there and had a very stiff drink and got on the airplane and flew to Bangalore.
What a story. All right, all right, all right. Sorry for the digression, but great story. Let's continue the conversation.
So the fourth thing you could do after observing, interviewing, and surveying is if you have big data available. So, for example, if you see many people on Google that are searching for a solution to a particular problem, you could assume that there might be a product or service one could develop there. And that's where big data and analytics comes in very important. And of course, that's used by the social media companies to sell their ads. They can help you target precisely who you're going to display your ads to. And that reflects upon an advertising manager a few years ago says, I know 50% of my ads are wasted. I just don't know which 50%. Well, now with the advent of big data, you are able to pinpoint exactly who you're going to present your message to in order to sell your product or sell your, for that matter, sell your politician. And in fact, back in 2016, a company funded by Mercer and run by Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's
Hmm.
son-in-law, started a company called Cambridge Analytica, and they put a fake survey on Facebook, and I happened to answer it. And as a result, they're able to gather all sorts of personal information from millions of Facebook users, which enabled them and the Russians to send very specific targeted ads to the people they identified through that data breach.
Wow.
Facebook then threw them off the platform. Cambridge Analytic went out of business, and as they did that, they sued Facebook, and that lawsuit just got uh, put away. Uh, and so that's what can be done if you have big data. Now, the other two problems with that is if all they're measuring is what you click on, they say a lie can travel around the world 10 times faster than it will take for you to tie your shoes, while
Hmm.
the truth very slow. So you have to take that into account. And all of this analytics is based upon a computer science idea that came out of Stanford in the 90s called wisdom of the crowds. So that's why in Google's case, they say people that looked at this, people that like that. That's what Amazon does. That's what Netflix does on their websites. So those are recommendations made based upon the behavior of others. And of course, the algorithms in Twitter, now X, and Facebook, and Meta, and so forth, try to maximize the number of clicks, even though it may be invading your privacy in order to make money off of the advertisers whose ads are run on those clicks. So I say if the crowd is so smart, how come when there's a fire in a nightclub, everybody in the nightclub, and this happens every few years, tries to exit the nightclub through the same door that
Hmm.
they came in, forgetting that there's probably another door
Another.
behind the that
Yeah.
they could use to get out. And a lot of people lose their lives, so much for the wisdom of the crowds. And likewise, in my example with Henry Ford of would you like to have a car? If people haven't thought of it yet, for example, if the internet existed back then and someone
Yeah.
searched for car, that keyword would show no hits. And therefore, all of the traffic we have on the bridge behind you just an imaginary thing in our mind because nobody really wants a car.
Wow.
At least that was the situation in the early
Back then.
1900s. If you all you do is follow wisdom of the crowds.
Interesting. So becoming a follower instead of a leader. And interesting stories you're telling today. We're talking here about customers. We're with Mr. Fradin here, spicecatalyst.com. And here in this episode, wow, you got to observe. I love the observation status, then the interview, then the survey. But we just need a show just to talk. I want to hear more of your stories. All right, let's continue. And we want to email you. Well, I got to point that out too. How do we reach you? Would you mind just sharing your email address, David? And Dave, I don't hear you. Dave? Yeah, I lost you again. I'm going to say it's Dave at spicecatalyst.com and hopefully we'll get your audio back. You there?
You hear me now?
There you go. Yeah. Technology. All right, continue. But I don't hear you again. Unfortunately, I don't hear you. Are you clicking something? Is it earbuds or I lost you again?
I think we might have some internet
You're
interruption.
there. Go for it. Go, 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 go.
Well, again, send me an email to Dave at spicecatalyst, one word.com. Send your questions and we'll be happy to answer them in future versions of this podcast.
Perfect. All right. In our last, we still have 7 minutes left in the show. What else did you want to share? We have a lot more to get through.
Well, next week I'll talk about the 130 competencies that
Oh,
people should have within their organization in order to be successful. And we'll cover such things as being able to put together a budget, being able to negotiate or mediate disputes. And in the area of negotiation, I can tell a story there that one of the things you want to do when you're negotiating with someone in order to get a successful product out, you need to get them to be involved in the with energy and time. So, for example, if you walked into a place that sells appliances, say Home Depot, they'll have a sign there that says how much that appliance costs. And if you ask them, can you give me a discount? They say, no, the sign is posted and it's non-negotiable. Well, in reality, the sign number on the sign was negotiable in the beginning, but they just don't want to do it. But if you take up a lot of the salesperson's time and have them demonstrate all of the different manufacturers and models of that appliance, they might be willing, as you start to walk out the door, to offer you a discount so that they haven't wasted all that time. Well, when I was writing about negotiation in my book, Successful Product Design and Management Toolkit, which is available on Amazon, all you have to do is search for my name on Amazon, David Fradin, and you'll see that book. I found that I wanted to buy a new induction stove and a new refrigerator. And
mm-hmm.
I noticed the prices at that time of bricks and mortar appliance stores in Silicon Valley were actually selling these things for more than what I could do to buy them online. So what I did is I went to, after I figured out what make and model I wanted, and what the list price was, which was not an easy thing to do back then. This would be about 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I then went to probably 2 dozen online appliance sellers.
Okay.
I got into the chat session and said, "Hi, I'm Dave Fradin. I'm in Saratoga, California. I want to buy this make and model and this make and model, and then also a microwave make and model. How much?" And they about two-thirds of them came back with a quote. And then I took the lowest quoted one, made a copy of that, and pasted it into the other ones that responded with a quote. And I said, I can get this price. Can you match it or beat it? So about a dozen of them responded with a new price. So I repeated that process. Eventually, I got it down to one or two. And on my whole package, I ended up saving about 30% off the list price, saved about $5,000 by getting people to invest their time in the process of the negotiation.
Wow, look at that. What a smart man. Very, very intelligent. And I could imagine how much you save that way. A lot of us don't put that time and effort in, but you should. That's what makes you so successful, David. You try again. You know the right things to do, and you're teaching your clients this.
And the other thing is called mediation, which is one of the things you have to do for product success. And that's where you get in the middle between two parties that can't come to a resolution over their conflict. And the way you mediate is you get together with one party, get them to trust you, and get them to tell you what it is that's bothering them and what is their minimum condition for a solution. Then you get together with the other party and you take that information to see if there's any overlap between the solutions each party is suggesting. And then you go back to each party privately and you say, I think it's possible that the other party would agree to this, that, and the other thing. Would you agree to that? And if they say yes, and then you go to the other party and do the same thing. If they say yes, then you bring the two parties that are in conflict together and you start out with all the things that they agree upon
Yeah.
first in order to build trust. And then
Hmm.
you start working down the list of things they don't agree upon and to see if you can come up with some sort of solution to resolve that. That's precisely what the Biden administration has been trying to do in the case of the Israeli-Palestinian war that's going on at the time that we recorded this. It's precisely what Henry Kissinger did to get the first peace treaty between the Arabs and Israelis back in the late 60s and early 70s. So mediation is also one of the most important skill sets that a product success manager needs to have in order to have a successful product or a successful service.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing all this. And again, we're excited to talk to you again next week. We have a few more weeks here to reach out to you one more time, spicecatalyst.com. And obviously, you could just Google his name, David Fradin. You'll find out his books, you'll find his courses, let alone all that he's doing here to help you. And next week, we're back, same time, same place.
Yep. If you listeners want to, they could go to my website, spicecast.com. And one of the blog entries is a list of these 130 competencies. And they can email me and tell me which of these competencies they would prefer that I delve into more deeply.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you again. And don't forget his email as well. If you want to reach out that way, you can. Dave@spicecatalyst.com. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks for.
And good luck on cleanup mode. Okay. Remember, everything happens for a reason. You got to stay positive, right? And you're healthy and you're happy. All right. We'll get through it. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.